Hey everyone, it's Ben Hardy here, and in today's video we're going to be going over the all-new 2022 Ram 1500 GT package. And in today's video we're going to go over what the package is and what this really means for the Ram truck lineup. And so with all that being said, let's just get straight into the video. Now the GT could go one of two ways. It could be its own standalone trim level, or it could be just a package on top of one of the trim levels. So for example, it might just be the 2022 Ram 1500 GT, or it might be you order a 2022 Ram 1500 Laramie and you get it with the GT package. I think it's going to be the latter. Now the packages that I think it's going to go alongside with are going to be kind of the lower down packages. So I think they might do it in the Bighorn, the Laramie, and then potentially the Rebel. The Rebel, that one's a little bit of a stretch, but that would be really cool if they did throw it in the Rebel package. We'll see what happens, but again, right, we only have so much information right now. But the other information we have is what the GT package will actually add to the truck, which I think is pretty cool. So first off, it'll come standard with a 392 axle ratio, which the Rebel already comes standard with. And what that'll do is, right, with having the lower gearing, you're going to get a little bit more tire spin, right? It's going to feel a little bit punchier off the line, which makes sense because the GT is supposed to be a sporty package. It'll also come with a cold air intake, which will give you a little bit more noise, a little bit more performance, right? It might add, there's no power figure stated, but maybe like 5-10 horsepower. And then also a performance exhaust. So again, more noise, maybe a little bit more horsepower. So what I think is going to happen is, out of the 5.7 Hemi, since it has the 392 axle ratio, right, it's already going to feel a little bit quicker compared to like a 5.7 Hemi paired with a 321 axle ratio. But then you'll have the cold air intake and the exhaust, so it'll sound a little bit louder, and then it'll have a little bit more horsepower. Maybe it'll be like, instead of the 395, it'll be 405 or 410 for the horsepower. And so then it'll just feel a little bit punchier compared to a regular Ram 1500. Now the next thing is a Sport Performance hood. Now there are two different Sport Performance hoods that Ram offers right now. You have the one on the regular 1500s that you guys have seen in a bunch of my reviews, like you can get on a limited black appearance package, or you get on the Ram 1500 Sport. But now we have the new Sport Performance hood that's on the Ram TRX that has the really cool air dam venting. Now I think they're going to do the original Sport Performance hood, but since this is all about building a performance truck, maybe they'll take the hood from the TRX, since they have that now, and they'll throw it on the truck. And so that'll be a way for people to get that cooler looking hood without having to shell out $70,000 for the TRX. Now the next thing that's associated with the GT is going to be some interior changes. So since this is a sportier package, they're going to want to add some sportier driving stuff to it. So they'll probably do the steering wheel similar to what they have on the TRX. So you have the leather, and maybe they'll give you Alcantara with it. It'll probably just be full leather is my guess, but maybe they'll throw the Alcantara in. They are going to be borrowing the paddles from the TRX, it sounds like, and so then you'll be able to shift the gears yourself. Again, if it's a sportier truck, right, you're going to want to be able to do sportier driving with it. And then also, no dial shifter. They'll give you the shifter that the TRX has, where it's in the center console, so you will lose storage space, but then you'll actually have like a real shifter versus the little dial that everyone makes memes about. And then on top of that, that means that these trucks will only have a center console, because that shifter is only built for trucks for the TRX, and the TRX only comes with the center console. So that means that with this GT package, if that's true, they do that with the shifter, you'll only be able to get a center console with this. And then it'll have extra lighting here throughout the truck as well. And then it'll come kind of more loaded up. So like power adjustable pedals, probably you'll get like the upgraded infotainment system with it as well. And then it looks like, yeah, I mean, that's most of the stuff. So basically what it sounds like the GT package is going to do is it's going to add some sportier exterior styling to the Ram 1500. It's going to add some actual performance parts, right? The air intake and the exhaust, and then you will get the 392 axle ratio, so it'll have a little bit more of a punch off the line. And then interior wise, right, it'll have some nicer interior pieces, including the steering wheel, the paddles, and then the shifter, right? Again, it makes sense for them to do that kind of shifter in the truck, because that's just gives you a sportier feel. And then obviously the center console and all those upgrades. So it pretty much is just going to give you kind of a more sporty looking, loaded up truck. Now let's get into why the Ram 1500 GT matters and what this means for the Ram lineup. So again, this could go one of two ways. They could either make it a trim package, or they could make it basically just an additional package on top of the trucks. I'm hoping they'll just make an additional package, and I hope that they will allow you to get this across the lineup, because that would be absolutely awesome if you could get a Bighorn GT, right, if you wanted to save a little bit of money, or if you wanted to go crazy, fully loaded, you could get a limited GT, and I think it would work with all the packages. I know the limited's stretching it because that's kind of like their luxury version of the Ram 1500, but I mean, they already have a limited black appearance package, which is your blacked out sporty looking one, so I don't think it's too much of a stretch to do a limited GT where you have a sportier, right, still have a sport hood, and then you have an exhaust and all that kind of stuff. I don't think it's too much of a stretch. But that would help out the lineup immensely because it would add kind of a sportier appeal to Ram's lineup, right? Right now, Ram is kind of known for the luxury side, and the TRX has added a sportier element to the brand. It's a competitor to the Raptor, but the TRX is so expensive, right? A base model TRX after shipping charges is $70,000, and then once you actually add options to it, most of them are $85,000 to $95,000. It's a very expensive truck. But with this GT package, it gives you cooler exterior aesthetic appearances. It gives you kind of a sportier feel because you have paddles on the back of the steering wheel. You've got an actual shifter that you can grab onto. You've got the sport hood, all that kind of stuff. You've got an exhaust and air intake for a little bit more noise at a much more affordable price range, especially if they put this in the Bighorn package. And it kind of goes along with what the whole, not just Ram, but like Chrysler, Jeep, and Dodge do, right? They will release a new vehicle and then they will do everything they can to milk that vehicle as much as they can. There's nothing wrong with that, but they will basically release tons of appearance packages where they're just making slight tweaks. And I think it's actually really smart business-wise, right? Because they're not having to do a ton of, put a ton of engineering into the vehicle to do these changes, but it's changing the vehicle enough to interest a different type of buyer. So for me, for example, if I couldn't afford the TRX, I would look at the rest of the Ram lineup, and really the only other truck that I'd be looking at is maybe the Rebel. But then if there was a GT package, then that would actually open up the options I'd look at, and it would make it so it was more likely for me to purchase a Ram because I would have two different sportier trucks to look at, because that's kind of my personal preference as a buyer, right? I like sportier type vehicles, and there's a lot of people that are like that because vehicles are so expensive nowadays, especially trucks, that it's not exactly the most affordable thing to have a sports car and a truck. And so manufacturers know that, and so now they're trying to release these sporty truck packages to kind of satiate people's needs, right? So that they can have a truck that they can tow with, they can take people around, they can put stuff in the bed, but they can have some fun and exciting driving dynamics to it as well. And I think Ram understands that, obviously, by them making this GT package. And how this actually changes the kind of rest of the dynamics with truck buying is it's kind of creating another new niche, and I think that's what Ram is really doing, right? Ford created a new niche by making the original Ford Raptor, right? It was the first time we had like a true sports truck. But the Raptor and the TRX are extremely expensive, and they are obviously also not the most practical, right? They don't have a crazy high towing capacity or payload capacity. But what packages like the GT package do is it's a sports truck, if you ask me, but then it's most likely still going to have the same towing and payload capacities as a regular Ram 1500. So it's still going to be a practical truck, but it's going to have that sportier edge. And so I think that Ram's trying to create a new segment where it's a practical sports truck versus a sports truck that is completely impractical. Again, like the Raptor, like the TRX. Again, you can do some things with them, but you can't do nearly as much as you can do with a regular truck. That's pretty much going to sum things up for today's video on the 2022 Ram 1500 GT. I want you guys to let me know in the comment section below if you're excited for the truck and if you're going to get one when it comes out. And I'm interested to see if any of the other manufacturers really answer this, because again, nobody really builds a truck like this right now. It'll be interesting to see if maybe Ford releases a new sport package that again adds an exhaust, all that kind of stuff. But I mean, it's kind of hard to compete when you have a 3.5 liter V6 versus a 5.7 Hemi from a sound perspective. So let's see what happens there. And then obviously Chevy, Toyota, Nissan, all the other manufacturers. We'll see what happens, and maybe I need to make a video on that. But anyways, if you're stopping for the first time, I'd really appreciate if you'd subscribe. And then if you feel like my videos are of intrinsic value to you, I'd really appreciate your support over on Patreon. Link in the description down below. I'll see all of you in the next video.